Okay, so episode 13 of the Blue Collar Intellectual Podcast. My guest today is Dr. Terence Wilson. We're going to talk about Chicago street violence and how we can possibly fix it to find solutions and the work that's being done on the ground in Chicago. As usual, I want to talk about the the issues and leave party and politics out of it, and let's focus on everything that we can do to solve problems. Dr. Terrence, how are you doing?
I'm okay. How you doing today? Can you hear me?
I've had better days, but it's okay because I got a glass of scotch on the rocks, and that makes it a little bit better.
I hear that.
Now, for the you live in Chicago, right?
No, I'm in Baltimore right now.
Oh,
I was born and raised in Chicago, and I lived there until I was 23.
okay. My mother is actually from Rantoul
Okay. I went to college
and
maybe
lived
about a
there
half an
for
hour
a
away
long
from
time.
there at Eastern Illinois. So very familiar with the area.
So, um, let's see if I can do it this way. So, what do you see? As we both know, the Chicago violence gets thrown out a lot, and a lot of people seem to have a lot to say about it. But I never hear anybody on either side of the aisle actually suggesting to solve any of the problems when it comes to the issues in Chicago. And I see mentioning a problem without actually providing a solution as being wholly contradictory to anything progressing forward. Um,
Yeah.
can you give us an idea of what you think would be a possible solution to be able to solve some of the issues within Chicago?
Sure. To address that, I would like to go back and talk about some of the things that got us to the point that we are now, which would be, crack in the 80s, crime bill in the 90s, which led to three strikes, you're out. Um, and
Yep.
one of the very underestimated issues that happened in Chicago was the closing of all the projects, which took people who
Yep.
had rent that was $300, $400 and put them in areas where rent was like $800, $900. So now you got to make up that difference somehow. Um, One of the
Yep.
things a lot of the citizens would ask for is, we need more laws, we need more laws, we need more laws. I I tend to think the opposite of that. I think we need less laws and less interaction with the police, because they made guns a felony for carrying them if you're not
Uh-oh.
carrying legally. It's not that you can't carry legally, but it's harder to get them legally, and if you carry illegally, it's a felony. So you have a 17-year-old kid who, I asked somebody to share a story with me. 17-year-old kid gets into a fight in high school. No big deal. We've all been there before. But his cousin's a gang member, and now he wants to come after the guy. You know, so he carries a gun on him because he knows the other guy
Uh-oh.
has a
I
gun on
think we
him.
just started breaking up.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think it might have been on my end. All
Okay.
right, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. Go ahead and can you start over because you started breaking up. I couldn't figure out
Sure.
where we were at.
Sure. And so in all this time of violence going in and out, sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, the people would ask for more laws. And with those more laws, you have more scrutiny on the people of Chicago. So I think that the actual answer is less laws, less interaction with the police, because the more laws aren't stopping the violence. So I had somebody share a story with me who was 17 years old at the time, said he got into a fight with a guy at school, which is no problem. We've all had fights in high school, but it's because he's a gang member and he wants to come after him. So now he has a gun on him because he wants to protect himself from the guy who's in the gang. But he runs into a police officer who finds the gun, and now it's a felony. So now at 17, he has a police record, and that kind of stuff, spirals out of control. So now, every job application I've ever had in Chicago, 7 years without a felony, even if it's not considered a felony, he still has a police record. So it still comes up on his background check. Even some jobs have 10 years. So, now he's from 17 to 24, he's working a low end job because he can't get a regular job. Probably he's not able to get into a college, even though he probably was a straight A student before he ran into the cop. Can't get into the military, Now at 24, he probably has a kid, and now he has resentment for the whole system because he had no way to protect himself. And that's what the laws do in Chicago. It convicts people who don't do anything instead of convicting people who are. You can't convict anybody of doing anything until they actually do something. But if he has a gun on him that's not legally carried, then now he's in a system. Same thing with gangs, being attached with gangs. All the cop has to do is say, well, I think he's a CVL or he's a four-corner hustler. Now he's attached to a gang. If he gets stopped for anything else, now he goes to jail. So I think the first thing to start is try to get the laws off the books, or getting these kids thrown in jail. Still with me?
Back. All right, is that better?
Yep, I got you back.
All right, just had to go over to the other network. All right, continue with where you were.
Yeah, so I was saying, I think that I don't know how far I got along until you got cut out, but I think that the laws they're more harmful to the people who are not doing crimes than they are to the people who are doing crimes. So
Yeah.
like I said, if you get caught with a gun, now you have a felony, you can't do anything. But the people who are actually doing the crimes, So I think it starts there, is getting crimes off the books for carrying a gun, or you get pulled over by a cop and you have something in your car. It's considered illegal, whatever it is. The crimes inside the city of Chicago are a lot more stiffer than if you're in the suburbs. So I think that's a problem.
I definitely think one of the things we need to get rid of is I'm not a big fan or a fan in any sense of drugs sentencing for possession or
Right.
substance use. Like
Yes.
I don't see any point in it. I see it as a waste of time. I see it as forcing interaction between unnecessary interaction between the police and the citizenry. And as one of the tenets of conservatism that I've always grown up with is limited government, limited interaction between the government and the citizenry. So I see that as a non-starter. It's not something that we should be engaging in. It's just completely unnecessary. And I would say the
Well,
same thing for uh, gun possession too. You just possessing a gun to me is not a threat
right.
unless you're using that gun to harm somebody or you have used it to harm somebody. So as
Correct.
long as that gun is not tracked back to a crime or you're not a suspect and we don't have your fingerprints on file at an unsolved cold case or something, I don't see why we should be locking people up for that.
Well, I
I'm
mean,
a big fan of constitutional carry. Like I live
yeah.
in New Hampshire. Everyone's got guns. We have no gun crime. Despite having a massive opioid epidemic, we have no gun crime.
Right.
And
But
because everybody's in danger of getting shot, even old ladies got guns.
yeah. And in that same aspect, if you know, in the city, your crimes are stiffer than, kid in the suburbs who has it and he gets a slap on the wrist, or the cop just takes it away, or he gives it back to his dad or whatever. There's no, you know unless the kid did something very bad, then he's going to get
Yeah,
hit a little bit harder.
I think that has a lot to do with financial resources. When you actually
Right.
make it to a courtroom, it and I look at and when you look past race and you look at the economic situations of defendants in the courtroom, those with economic stability and with the ability to afford a private attorney, attorneys get paid to win. When you can
Yeah.
afford a private attorney, you get someone who gets paid to win. When you
Yes.
get someone who gets paid on salary by the state, and a meager salary at that by comparison to a private attorney, you're getting someone who doesn't get paid to win. Their accolades are completely different.
Right.
Prosecutors don't get weighed the same as a public defender. So it's a completely different dynamic there. And like I said, if I can afford a badass lawyer, doesn't matter where I come from or what color my skin is, I'm very likely to get I'm very likely to get off
Right.
with whatever crime I committed just for sheer fact that I am a headache.
Right.
I'm a headache to the city. I'm going to cost you money. You're not going to be able to put me in jail lightly or easily. So you're going to most likely go back out and find somebody else that you can.
Right. And also with that, with your economic background, you've done, you've shown employment, you've shown schooling. When these kids don't, they're barely out of high school or something like that, they can't show that. So even with the
Yep.
economic, you don't show being a good citizen at the time too, which is
Yeah.
also a problem. So that, yeah,
Yeah.
when they get caught up in the system very early, it brings generational problems, because now the father is doing, or the mother, or whoever, now brings that problem to their kids, and is unable to, get out of that situation. And if something else happens, like, you know, they're holding their brother's gun, and
Yep.
then they get into, some domestic squabble with their brother, and they're fighting, and the gun's in the house, and it's in his house. Who gets tagged with the gun? He does. So
Yep.
it's
There.
it could just spiral out of control the wrong way, and if it's not handled correctly.
When we got a question from Daniel Jong says Alan Dershowitz mentioned how problematic the sentencing law is, where if you make a challenge in court and fail, there's a 10 times duration penalty. Do you also find that an issue?
I don't think that that's an issue. I think it's more of the if you don't play ball, if you like you were saying, if you make it harder for them to do, to 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 get you on a crime or something like that, they figure that you're not playing ball, and they're going to give you the stiffer penalty plus your
for
background.
make, for making it harder on them.
Yeah.
Like you gave me a headache. I'm gonna make your life hell.
Yeah, I don't think that just saying, I'm gonna ask a question, or I'm gonna say this, or I'm gonna say that, it's gonna be harder. But if you're not playing ball with them, then they're gonna make it harder for you.
No, most definitely. I see a lot of the the violence issue in the inner city having it starts with education. Because
Yes.
even with a bad home life, you can still get a good education.
Yes,
And
I was, yeah, that's part of my background. My mother had a mental episode when I was in sixth grade. I ended up in a foster home for a little bit. I was taken by my aunt from sixth grade, and then I went to my dad, who had drug issues, and so I graduated high school. So for me, you also have to know when you can take your own life into your own hands. And I did 4-letter sports. I did football, wrestling, baseball, and track. I was at school from 8 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. I was also very good at basketball. So after we did wrestling practice, they had basketball that we could play. So you got to get
yep.
yourself into programs where you can help yourself out. And I had real good role models that took me in when my dad was having his issues and my mom was in the hospital.
Okay. So. I had my mom was an alcoholic when I lived in Dayton, Ohio. From the she's a recovering alcoholic, and she's better now. Hasn't had a drink in years. And I moved up to New Hampshire with my dad when I was 12. And I can honestly say, like, I lived in Dayton, Ohio, and had I stayed where I was in Dayton, Ohio, there's a good chance I probably would have ended up in the shit or in prison. And then I moved up here with my dad, and instead of going to college, I decided to go active duty in the Marines because I wanted to be one of those career, like, 38-year-old or 38 years of service, salty bastard that friggin' you had to kick me out to get me to leave. And yeah. And I always thought my parents were big into history, and they were big into, they're like, the only place that you can get education is here. That the main place you get education is in your mind. You acquire it wherever you can go. You remember your experiences. You read books. The more knowledge you can get, the stronger you'll be. And a classroom is not the only place you can get it. And I always saw when you have a lack of education, of good educational opportunity, it breeds a lack of economic opportunity. And when you have a lack of economic opportunity, you make bad choices to make up for that lack of opportunity. And those bad choices lead you to more bad choices, and bad situations lead you to prison and so on and so forth. Or you might not be the lucky one that makes it to prison or rehab or out the other side. And I see a lot of the violence that we have within our communities and stuff stemming from bad educational opportunities, which is why, even though I'm an advocate for like school choice, I'm also pragmatic to where I understand that that is not the only solution. Yes, when you have competition between schools, public schools, and charter schools and private schools, it will breed a better product, just like competition between anyone does. But that's not enough in and of itself to be
Yeah.
able to solve these issues. And um, I know there are people trying to solve the violence within the communities, and I want to know what do you know that is going on the ground that can to try and solve some of these problems, like avenues that people are taking to take care of some of this.
Well, one of the things that is a problem, school choice has always been around.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was in elementary school, I had school choice. Um, and when I first went to my first high school was one of the top high schools in Chicago, which I went 3 weeks.
Okay.
So one of the other things I would speak about with one of the problems with Chicago is infrastructure, because with the school choice, you had to get the kids to the school. So parents don't have the resources or a car to get the kids to the school, then they're not going to be able to. Even if they're accepted, they're not going to be able to go. So the reason I left my first high school, Von Steuben, was because I had a 2 day a week class, which was class zero, um, biology. So
Okay.
class zero and first period was biology 2 days a week. So one day I woke up late and um, I missed class zero, but I made it to first period. And having a very bad day, gave the teacher a couple curse words, and I transferred before I got kicked out of school because I knew I'd get kicked out of school. So, but I ended up going what is considered one of the bad neighborhoods, or high school in Chicago, and I made the most of it. I mean, even if you're at a bad school, you got to try to make the most of it. And one of the things that I've always been about making philosophies for myself, even in high school. And I
Yeah.
told myself, there was one day that in high school, the first time I had never had dinner.
Okay.
Went to bed hungry, and I thought about it, and I said, I really thought about it going to start selling drugs the next day. I really did. And just sitting there thinking about the whole night, I said, well, one of the philosophies I came up with was, well, if you eat fast, you're not going to eat long. If you eat
Yeah.
steady, you're going to eat long. So that's when I got, next day I hooked up with the wrestling coach who was basically like my father at the time. Um, he got me into different things, and then my life took off from there. It really changed my life.
That's good. My dad got me into martial arts at a young age. Martial arts and football because I was getting into fights because Dayton, Ohio was right on the Mason-Dixon line, and we still have some issues um, one way or the other. So I was getting into fights. My dad got me in martial arts to learn me how not to fight, how to avoid getting in fights, and how to handle myself if I do. But he also got me into football to get my anger out. And that honestly put me on in a different direction
Yeah,
than I was going because it was not boding well based on who I was picking fights with. So
yeah. But I would
I
like to
think,
get back. I would like to get back to the structure of the city.
yeah,
Um, a lot of people talk about the violence of Chicago, but to give reference, if a lot of people have ever been in Baltimore, D.C., Chicago's
hmm,
as big as Baltimore is Baltimore, D.C., and everything in between. That's how big
yeah,
Chicago is. So when you have these laws that are consolidated and then they close down projects, you basically have
Mhm.
everybody, the poorest of the people, like we were talking economics, moving into 3 different neighborhoods. So the majority of your, if I'm not mistaken, I believe they said it was 36 neighborhoods in Chicago, but the majority of your violence is coming out of 3 neighborhoods where you have the poorest people at. And the structure and the infrastructure, is creating jobs in those areas where people can get to them through the infrastructure of the city, but also us taking care of ourselves.
Yeah.
If first of all, as black people, we have to create good business models for our customers. And as customers, we have to realize that we may have to pay a little bit more for that product, because you can't compete with, let's just say, Walmart, because they buy them pennies on a dollar versus a guy who may buy 10 to sell to
Yeah.
all his customers or whatever. So in terms of the structure, I just think that we need more resources into the city, and we also need to take care of our own the resources that we have. We need to reinvest back into the city.
That buying local is one of those things that it's keeping wealth within the community. And that's something that Dr. Boyce talks about all the time. When you keep wealth in the community, you don't end up with gentrification and stuff like that, because the people living in the community, the longer that wealth stays there and it transfers hands and stays within the community, you have people within the community that can build it up. And the
Yeah,
more people build up their own communities, the less violence you have. The bigger stake you have in your community, the less you are inclined to engage in violence.
correct.
So everything regarding violence, the driving factors are what we need to approach. Just punishing is not enough. And yes, there are those people out there that there are truly evil people that will engage in evil acts regardless of what you do. And the punishment is for those people. The reform in the opportunities are for the people that you can reach, that you can avoid getting there, you
Correct.
can keep from getting there. And I think that's where I think we need to focus on. And I think that's where everybody misses, because the reality is most of the people who are in charge of solving these problems do not come into the communities for which they're supposed to solve problems in. I
Yeah,
mean, it just is what it is. So we're kind of
but,
left
but
to solve our own problems.
yeah, but also with solving our own problems is the squeaky wheel gets the grease. You know,
It does.
if not only is voting is not the last step. Voting is the first step. You have to
Yes.
be look, you have to read the policies. You got to get to your to your the people who represent you, and you got to get,
Mhm.
if you're not saying anything, those 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 state resources are going to go to the rest of the state, or it's going to go to the suburbs, because they're asking for it or demanding
Yep.
it, I should say. You have to demand it. You can't just ask for it, because if you're just voting, is, oh well, they didn't do anything for me, so next time I'm not going to vote. Well, it's not going to get any better if you don't speak up. So you have to be out there active.
That's the one thing that I've heard everywhere I've lived, especially when I lived out in San Diego, because California is such a big state, and um, they pass state, I think they call them state initiatives, on a regular
Hmm.
basis that will get tons of signatures and they'll hit the ballot and stuff, but they don't go anywhere. And it's not because the citizens didn't support it. It's not because they didn't get enough votes. It's because the state legislature just says hell no. But I ran into so many people out there that don't seem to understand that not voting is not a protest. Not voting is not a protest. It actually works the exact opposite. When you
Right.
don't vote, you actually empower the interest groups that have, you empower the interest groups, because the only way you can compete with them is overwhelming numbers, is by
Right.
making yourself heard. And like you said, being the squeaky wheel. Don't go away.
Right.
Don't go away once they get elected. Don't just walk away and say, all right, we got our guy in, that's it. It's not it.
Right.
Because you got to remind him every single day that you put him there and he's supposed to work for you.
Right.
The people that are supposed to solve these problems are employees,
Right.
and we're
But
the employers.
and right, and also in that same aspect, if you say something day one and he gets 30 things thrown on his on his desk from day 2 to day 18, now you're at the bottom of the pile. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's like, you have to be there, you have to speak up, you you know you need, if you know someone, have them speak to them. You just got to have people in the right spot speaking at the right time.
One of the things that, as far as prosecutions go, with the issues in Chicago, and not just Chicago, but every city, the overwhelming number of prosecutions from low level crimes and stuff like that. One of the things that I saw that I thought would be worth it is for a community to retain a lawyer or a law firm themselves, not necessarily the city government or the town, to where that person's getting paid a salary and not getting paid to win, but the community retain a lawyer to protect its own citizens against the encroachment of an ever growing government. Uh, and I see that as a way, when we all engage as a community and we remember that we can operate as a community and we can have our own legal representation, and we pay that lawyer to win cases, and the community can vote on who they want the lawyer to defend. That way you don't have the worst of the worst getting defended by on the community's dime either. There are people that you do want to go away to jail, and there are people that you don't.
Right.
And friggin' your boy on the corner who had a dime bag in his pocket, who was in the wrong place at the wrong time during like a stop and frisk, is not the dude that deserves to go to jail.
Correct. No, I've never
And
heard that before, and I really like that idea. But another thing I would like to add to that is going back to the laws. If
yeah,
you get stopped with that dime bag, you got 15 charges. You got 15 charges for one thing that you did, and they're hoping that you settle for the actual one that you did. So they're banking on those
the plea deals.
the plea deals, so they don't have to go to court and they save money, but they also get to put people away and put them in jail and profit off of private prisons, stuff like that. So
and that's one of the things that I hate the whole plea deal system, because I see it as a way. I see prosecutors nationwide use that trick to pad numbers, where they'll allege crimes, they'll get you to agree to a plea deal, knowing damn well that you can't afford a lawyer, and the lawyer that you have is a city defender that doesn't even remember your damn name. And they'll get you in a room and they'll get you to agree to a plea deal, or you won't even get to see a lawyer before they'll get you to agree to a plea deal, and they'll allege 10 crimes that you're not even guilty of.
Right.
And that goes back to education, because if you have good education, and I see this across America, not even just in the inner city, but if you have a bad education, you don't know your rights. And if you don't know your rights, you're susceptible to getting thrown into this stuff. If you don't know, and like we said before, if you don't have a good education, your opportunities pretty much stop when you walk out the door.
Yeah, but also with that is the experience of, if you actually are arrested, some of the best lawyers are the people who've already been in jail. So
yeah,
because they've been through it and they know what to say and stuff like that. So unfortunately, that's a lesson that has to be learned the hard way, or you have to be able to get someone to show you the right way to handle it at the time. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you're right on that. So
Yeah, it's one of those things to solve an issue like violence, or to solve an issue like poverty. It's never just one angle. It's always like five. It's always like 5 to 10 different angles you got to take, because the root cause of the problem is never something so easy to adjust.
mm-hmm.
Like you said, it starts with the laws and it starts with the policy that affects our education system and affects our economic opportunity and affects the money staying in the community and affects who can buy up property in the community and how we can invest in our
Yeah,
community and all of that. So, like, I'm not a big fan of taxes. I see taxes as sucking money out of the community that I want to stay there. Um, and I see that dollar as it leaves the community, it loses power as it goes all the way up the federal government, and then all the way back down as the state ends up having to beg the federal government to get it back, and they
right,
get it back at 50 cents on the dollar, and then our local or city governments end up begging for it from the state, and they get it back at friggin' 15 cents on the dollar, and what we actually get in the community is about 5 cents on the dollar. So
right.
and
Well,
traveling through bureaucracy and systems costs a lot of money.
yeah, I've always been a big fan of um, no state and federal tax, but a big sales tax. So
Yeah,
if the economy is doing good, if the sales tax is 12% and the economy is doing good, and you're buying stuff from the community, then that money goes back to the community. And if it's
yeah,
not, the people who are supposed to be working need to get to working, because they're not going to be bringing that money in.
yeah. As much money as we spend, we as much as we buy, we could easily fund our government with even a low or modest sales tax.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I was just
um,
using it for
and
instance.
there's so many economists, including Dr. Boyce, that have talked about that. Um, and I see a way that we can really move forward by changing the economics, which economics drives into policy and drives into education. Uh, it's never just one thing. It's always a million different things that all affects each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
One more thing I would like to add is I'm on the outside looking in now, but I do see a lot of positivity coming from Chicago. I see a lot of people who were in jail. They're now truck drivers. Um, people become barbers, and they've taken their friends and their sons and they put them through barber school, and now they work for them, or they open up a second barber shop. And I see a lot of people bringing a lot of other people along. And I've seen that
yeah,
for like the last 10 years. And I just think that the economy, the crime rate had been going down a little bit. It's still
yeah,
high, I know. But when you see people bring other people along, it's a good thing. And
yeah.
it's also, it's giving that education that they need.
I've like I said, like you just said, from the outside looking in, um, I see the trades becoming a big thing with
Mm-hmm.
people getting out of prison, because and I like the investment in that, because when you get a person who gets out of prison, if they can't get a job and they can't become productive within the first 6 months of them being out of prison, their recidivism rate shoots up to like the 90%. It's
Yeah.
an absolutely insane number. And once you get somebody back into prison for a second time, good luck getting them out of that cycle. Uh,
Yeah.
if they don't end up back in there for good. So I see that investment, like you said, truck driving, the trades, electrician, plumbing, stuff like that. And now that you have all these coding boot camps, that puts you in a whole other sphere of income earning. And
Mm.
I'm seeing with this younger generation, of cats, investing has become more popular within the community,
Yeah.
and more people investing is always a good thing. The financial literacy is starting to increase, thanks to a lot of people on the ground doing work. And uh, you got people who get out of prison and they go right into the market. They go right into the market and they start investing. And like you said, they're bringing people along with them,
Yeah.
and that is great. That'll definitely pay dividends, and it'll pay dividends in a much shorter amount of time than anything that we could do on the government level when we all work together to pull each other up.
You're right. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
for me, I do. I'm self-employed. I have about 40 customers where I do a couple calls a week. I do Walgreens Photo Lab. I do Walmart self-checkout installations, TV repair, stuff like that. And I have I'm on a little bit of a small. What I'll do is I'll take my wife as a social worker at the school. Um, it's like, well, um, try to get. I haven't done it yet, but what one of my plans is once some of the kids start coming of age, is taking them along with me and showing them what I do, and then putting them on. I've already taken kids of friends and or somebody who may be down, and I'll take them to a job with me, and I'll chat them up, and I'll then I'll give them a reference. So if they need a job, if they do more than I can give them, I just say, hey, just remember, pay it back sometime in the future, and bring somebody along with you. So that's one of my goals.
yeah. Me and my father, we have a cleaning company up here, commercial cleaning company. Me, my father, and my brother run it, and that's one of the things I want to do is start bringing people along, uh, give them jobs, get people back productive again.
Yeah.
Um, and I see that'll be the way that we really move the ball. And when people are, what they say, idle hands do the devil's work.
Mm-hmm.
When you got idle hands and you don't see yourself moving forward, it's not even just the idle hands. People, I don't think a lot of people understand when you don't see yourself doing anything, you don't feel that accomplishment. You are more likely to engage in the stuff that I call it negative capitalism. Sonny Johnson gave that term, negative capitalism.
Big
So
cat out the sunny.
yeah, so Sonny Johnson's she's a queen. So
Yeah.
it's that negative capitalism. If you don't have something positive that you're doing and you're not moving forward, uh, you're going to end up moving backwards. You're going to end up taking that step in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Yeah. With the coronavirus and physical ailments, I'm finally getting back to what I normally do. I lost like so much work during coronavirus because I'm in the retail store, and the
Yeah,
retail stores don't want you there fixing anything or replacing anything because they want to be dealing with their customers right now. So it's just like, and then it started, becoming physical and stuff like that. But I'm starting to come out of it now, and you know, just the negative thoughts and stuff like that were
yeah.
bringing me down.
This coronavirus at first, like the first week or so, while everyone's trying to figure out during the shutdown everything, we shut down everything too. Like
Yeah.
they were like, all right, everything's closed, nothing's open back up. Then some of the contracts that we have were labeled as essential businesses, so we ended up back to work pretty quick. But we basically hit the opposite scenario where we hit the level of complete attrition to where we had contracts that went from like a couple of days a week to 6 7 days a week.
Mm.
um, all of our contracts were like 6 7 days a week, and we got to a point where like i'm I'm literally going to shut down. I can't like we can't keep our staff going at this point, and then you get to the point where everyone just we end up losing people throughout the pandemic because they just can't keep it up. It's hard. 7 days a week continuously, just one contract after the other each day until eventually you have no time. So unfortunately, the pandemic was, I mean, like, I'm glad it's good for business, but at the same time, it can also bring negatives when
Right.
there is such thing as too much of a good thing. So
Yeah.
And that ended up weighing on me too, is I can't sleep, get no sleep. When you got too much to do, you get no sleep, and when you got nothing to do, you get all the sleep in the world. So I guess it's a give and take.
So
But
if I have a question for you, what do you see in terms of, let's say, like the next 2 years, in terms of, do you see a lot of good positivity moving forward, or do you see a lot of coming together, or what do you think about that?
honestly, I think it's kind of on the fence after what happened today. Um, I see a lot of people, like I said earlier, I'm a conservative, so I see a lot of people on the right that glom onto a movement and pervert it into something worse than it originally was. And I see a lot of people that got into the administration and gave bad information. I also know people who are in the administration trying to counter that information, but it's an issue of numbers. When you have all the numbers swaying in the opposite direction, you go in the opposite direction. I think because this is somewhat of a political question to get into this societal issue.
Well, I just meant
It's
more.
sort of like a no, I mean it's sort of like a Brave New World sort of scenario, or I'm sorry, an Animal Farm scenario. Once Snowball is gone, does Snowball continue to be the bad guy?
Mm,
Um, I think I think we as individuals, if we talk to each other within the communities, I actually see a lot of people who are reasonably positive in their own life, and I think if we're reasonably positive in our own life and we can continue to interact with each other as human beings and
right.
have real positive discussions, I see us solving a lot more issues within our own communities and for each other and having more productive conversations than we'll get from anything else.
Yeah. Well,
So
when
I'm a little optimistic. I'm going to say I'm optimistic at the moment, and I'll wait to see how things play out. Um, but I don't think we're really as divided or is really as chaotic as everyone says. So
yeah.
I think both Chicago, like I think the cities, I think the country as a whole, I think people in general are going to be in a better place in 2 years because I think we're starting to see each other a little bit more clearly than we were before.
Right. I think that the we all want something that's in the middle. It doesn't. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
want to hold on to our principles, but it is a little bit of give and take.
Yeah,
You don't have to. You don't have to give up on your principles, but you can't stand firm in front of others' principles. You have to
yeah.
give a little bit. You take a little bit, you give a little bit, but I'm with you. I'm very positive on. I don't. There's the far people on the right, far people on the left, but most of us are in the middle, and
Yeah.
we there's a lot of positivity in terms of talk, and I think that we're headed there, and I think that we're headed for good things, even though it's a bad time now.
I think largely the majority of the people in the country, I'd say, agree on probably 75 to 80% of the issues that we approach on a daily basis. and that I'd say one of the main drivers that keeps us arguing over that 80 that final 20% are the people both in the media across the entire
Mm-hmm.
spectrum, because they've all picked sides. There's no impartial media anymore, and
Right.
there are those that use the media to their own agenda. And like I said before, people who will glom onto any movement to gain power, regardless of where it lands on the spectrum, on the political or sociological spectrum. So I think we all largely have a very similar culture, and we disagree on very little. And I think when we talk to each other, we realize that
Yeah.
it's like one big happy family,
Yeah. We can't
or
let.
dysfunctional family sometimes.
Yeah, we can't let the 20% tear us down. We have to be positive and work through the 80, and you talk through the other 20, but if you get the 80% done, you're moving in a good direction.
Yeah, I think as long as we start from a place where we don't automatically assume that the other person, because we agree on 20%, that they must be the most far extreme um, of the ideological opposition. I think if we start from a place where we agree that, hey, these are all normal, average, everyday people that we can have conversations with, we'll all go further.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
guys, I thank you for coming on, man. It's good getting to talk to you outside of the Twitterverse, where the masters of the universe can keep shutting us down and blocking people and putting everybody in Twitter jail. So
Yeah.
nice getting talk.
But also, I'd like to thank you for inviting me. And like I said, I think that the people who I normally talk to on the right, like I call you guys the tip of the spear. You guys are doing the good work. You, Felicia, Sonny, Jeff. Me and Jeff get into it a little bit more than usual, but he's a good guy. And I look forward to meaningful conversation in the future. And I wish you guys luck, and I hope that you guys push where you want to go.
Hopefully we can all bring the conversation back towards the center uh, in the near future.
All
I
right.
will catch you in the Twitter space very soon. You have a good night, bro.
All right. You too. Take care.
All right, everyone. That was episode 13. Talk about violence in Chicago, some solutions, and how we might be able to solve some of the problems that we have with Dr. Terence Wilson. You can find him at just a minute. I will post the Twitter on here. I'll post this Twitter on here. So, Terrence. All right. It was a great conversation. I love having productive conversations. We could leave the politics out of it because, frankly, um, just talking politics where we're constantly at each other's throats doesn't really get us anywhere. All right. So here is Dr. Terence Wilson. You can find him on Twitter. He is great if you'd like to follow him. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. And hopefully we will have a good year going forward in spite of recent events. I think we can really change the way we look at the political spectrum and we approach conversations if we start from a position of grace and understand that we are not all drastically ideologically opposed, and we largely agree on probably about 80 to 85% of things. My 80% friend is not my 20% enemy. Got me?
And what kind of player am I? Am I an offensive man or a defensive man? That's right, I'm neither. I play my opponent. If he likes to attack, I force him to defend himself. If he's a cautious man, I draw him into dangerous water. See, you get so frustrated playing defensive positions, you make stupid moves you never make if you were thinking. When you come here, boy, check that shit at the door,
I'm at the top of my game, cut the check. Somebody better king me, I'm the best. Let's play a game of checkers. Better yet, the game don't love nobody. Let's play chess.